you permission to modify my f***ing bike!
Sorry, it was an emergency.
Over the years, there have been a lot of Neptunia games, most of which I've talked about on my channel in the past, whether it was a full-on review or just an unboxing. The core set of games are the Hyperdimension Neptunia games, which are JRPGs. But then we have all these spin-offs which are different genres. Neptunia U and Megatech Mention were both hack-and-slash games, Hyper Devotion War was a tactical RPG, and of course there's Producing Perfection, which was that awful idle game. Today we'll be taking a look at the newest Neptunia spin-off. It's called Superdimension Neptune vs. Sega Hard Girls for the PC. Bit of a sketchy sounding name. Like all the spin-offs, it was originally for the Vita, but unlike those, Superdimension is a JRPG. It's also a crossover game, which is where the Sega Hard Girls part comes from. Apparently, Sega Hard Girls is a multimedia project, that's vague, which is based on anthropomorphized Sega consoles. Sounds kind of familiar. Not sure why they chose that name though, makes it sound like there's a surprise waiting underneath that skirt. Since this is a spin-off, I think Superdimension Neptune is best enjoyed if you've played some of the other games prior. There are a lot of references to the other games, and if you're new to the series, Superdimension will probably just confuse you.
Haven't you played the other games? Like I said, I'm pretty skilled.
The story takes place in an alternate universe, because of course it does. Iffy is the main character this time around, and she adventures through some sort of post-apocalyptic version of game industry with her motorcycle, and some really wonky looking driving physics apparently. She spots a girl falling from the sky because Neptunia game, who turns out to be someone called Segami. Of course she has amnesia, so we don't get to find out who she really is until later in the game. Both Iffy and Segami end up visiting the Grand Library, which holds all the knowledge of the world, but then somehow parts of history get erased, and Segami, Iffy, and later Neptune try to regain the lost pieces of history by traveling through different eras of gaming. You'll notice that each goddess is in some sort of conflict with the equivalent Sega Hard Girl. So yeah, the plot's very much out there, but that's all par for the course when it comes to anything Neptunia related. I found this story to be fun and lighthearted and quite enjoyed it. I noticed that the characters are really firing shots at each other whenever they get the chance, which is pretty funny. Oh yeah, did I mention Neptune somehow becomes a bike early on in the game?
Was it our mom? Or our dad? Which one was a bike? What?
In terms of gameplay, Superdimension dives right into its new dungeon exploration mechanics. You can now jump, climb from one platform to another, sprint to make your jumps longer, crawl through tight spaces, and move along ropes. I always like it when developers want to add new features to enhance gameplay, but I personally feel that these new features aren't all that well implemented. The added platforming feels awkward. Moments like this are just so frustrating. It doesn't help that you can't tilt the camera enough to see what's above or below. That being said, it's actually not possible to fall to your death, but still, it's easy to unintentionally run into an opponent. It all just feels clunky in terms of controls and visuals. The animations are just wonky. They're slower than the actual speed of travel sometimes. The sprinting is nice though, because you can actually finally run away from enemies, and it also just makes the exploration part just much faster. You know, getting from one side of the dungeon to the other. The battle system is unique to the game, and honestly, I hope it stays that way. I'm definitely not a fan. The old combo system is gone. All you can do is hit the attack button a couple of times until this meter maxes out. You can do a stronger attack by holding down the attack button, but it maxes out your meter, and it takes longer before you can use that character in battle again. While you fight, your fever gauge will slowly fill up. Once it reaches 100%, you can enter fever time by jumping into this rainbow-looking star that pops up. I wonder where they got that idea from. All stats are up by 10%, you can use new special attacks, and the enemies don't get a turn until the meter runs out. I think the battle system is the worst part of the game, to be honest. Like with the old Neptunia games, you could just, do different combos, and you can customize that from character to character. This made the battles more interesting, so I'm not really sure why they thought it would be a good idea to mess with that formula, but they did.
Soul combination!
Finally! My turn! I'm a little embarrassed. Final blow.
In terms of graphics, it looks like most other Neptunia games that started life on the Vita. Lots of recycled models and environments. There are some new dungeons though. This one looks pretty cool and futuristic, for example. But I just wish they'd make the older dungeons better. I mean, you can see here, for example, that you can see new areas in the distance that you can reach, like here with the rope. But then we get stuff like this. Thank you for tricking me into thinking that there's a path. Character models look pretty good, like always. And you also might have noticed that Iffy has a spiffy new outfit. The enemies are the same old designs from previous games. Nothing to see here. Let's move along. Like always, you can choose between Japanese and English dubs. I never had a problem with the English dub, so that's what I set it to.
I'm pretty sure it's actually Satan!
In terms of the actual quality of the port, I haven't really had any notable bugs or stability issues. From what I can tell, this port is working quite well. It's also nice and 60 frames per second-y. There's one little issue where sometimes some of the spoken lines were louder than they should have been, but it's nothing terrible. For the controls, you can basically choose whatever you want, a controller or a keyboard and mouse or whatever, but I always use controllers because these games are made for controllers, so yeah, Xbox 360 controller it is for me. All the button mappings translate over as they should, but if you want to, you can change all of that to whatever you want. The Lily rank system still exists in this game too. It's now formation based, so you don't need to place characters behind the active characters to form a couple. The quests are handled in an interesting way, let's say. You may notice that there's a number beside the quests, or beside the quests rather. There's a time limit you need to consider. Every time you finish a quest, the counter goes down by 1. When you run out of time, the only thing you can do is fight something called the Time Eater, which is a giant monster that eats time apparently. And that's a battle you will fail because he's really difficult to beat. But what happens next is you trigger the repeat portion of the game. So it's a sort of time loop. Yay, those are always fun. So basically you repeat that portion of time over and over again, and you try to weaken the Time Eater by beating the missions you couldn't complete before the repeat. To be perfectly honest, I don't really like time-based mumbo jumbo like this, so I would have preferred if this was all handled completely differently. It's like I'm being forced to plan out which missions to play. I'm doing enough scheduling and time management in real life. I don't want to do that in a game. And another thing is that Kampa is missing from the game. Kampa and Iffy are always together, so it just doesn't feel right if she's not included. And speaking of missing characters, there's also a distinct lack of other main characters of the franchise, but I guess that can be excused since this is a spin-off. And that's Superdimension Neptune vs Sega Hard Girls. In the end, I think fans of this series will enjoy the game and story despite the battle system and the time-based quests. I always think of Neptunia games to be the video game equivalent of a B-movie. It's low budget and ridiculous, and half the fun is just pointing out all the weirdness. But the series creators know this, which is why the series never takes itself seriously. It's available on Steam for a relatively cheap price, so check that out if you like what you see. Before I end the video, I just wanted to tell you that I now have a Patreon if you want to support me. If you want to help me out to cover some costs of running this channel, you can check that out. If not, that's cool too, you can just keep watching the videos as you are now. I don't have many Patreon rewards set up currently, but if you have any suggestions, just let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. I hope to add some more reward tiers as time goes on. But yeah, thanks for watching and see you again in the next video.